So affordability, a big issue in the campaign. For many Canadians, it's always been an issue. And I think you can expect to hear the political parties debate. At some point, it'll be raised, I believe, the idea of a basic income in this country. It's been talked about by politicians in the last number of years, sort of looked at as a possible experiment here. It's been tried in other countries. Has it worked? Some places have tried it, and a lot of them have abandoned it. In essence, it's a national guaranteed minimum income without the conditions that come with the current array of targeted income supplements that people get from governments. So has the time come for a basic income? My next guest thinks it has. Evelyn Forget is a professor in the Department of Community Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. Professor Forget, first of all, thanks for joining me today. It's good of you to take the time.
I'm delighted to be here.
What do we mean when we talk about a guaranteed basic income for all Canadians? Let's start there.
Okay. A basic income is a regular and predictable transfer of money from the government to individuals and to families designed to help them meet their basic living expenses. So it should be sufficient to live a very modest life with dignity. Usually when we talk about it in Canada, we talk about a system that's designed a little bit like the Canada Child Benefit. So if you have no work income, for example, you receive the full benefit. And as your income from other sources increases, the benefit gradually declines until at very high incomes, it disappears entirely.
All right, you make the case that in this country now that we've basically come to a point in the road where a basic income is inevitable in Canada. How come?
Well, I think that's the case. In fact, we already have two groups of Canadians who receive a form of basic income. If you think about people over age 65, between the OAS and the Guaranteed Income Supplement for low-income seniors, that is a basic income for seniors. The Canada Child Benefit is, again, a form of basic income for families with kids under age 18. So what we're missing in this country is a system of adult benefits designed along the same path. Our adult benefits are delivered by the provinces, and they tend to be very conditional. There are a number of restrictions and limitations on those programs. And if we put that into the context of a lot of other social programs, most of the social programs we have for adults in this country were designed for a very different kind of economy than the one we're currently living in.
Right. You make the case. You make the case that this idea that that technology is changing so many jobs and cutting incomes in so many or in a lot of workplaces, that more and more Canadians will need some kind of income support that isn't covered by those current government programs. Right.
That's right. I don't think the jobs are disappearing. The jobs are still there, but the quality of jobs that people have are very different. So they're much more likely to be working part-time when they'd rather be working full-time, to be cobbling together a number of jobs in order to make ends meet. And what a basic income does is it tends to fill in the gaps between some of the social programs.
Right. So this would be different than, I mean, you touched on it, all those other income support programs that governments have in place now and that they provide. They do provide, I guess, in effect, some Canadians with some sort of basic income guarantee, but there's a whole group that's missing, you're saying.
That's right. That's right. So if you think of employment insurance, for example, so many people who do work don't qualify for employment insurance because of the hour restrictions on qualification. If you think about provincial social assistance or income assistance, there are usually a number of qualifications that people have to meet in order to receive that money. And very much of what they receive depends on the discretion of caseworkers. With a basic income, the amount you receive depends only on the income you earn.
There's the argument that a basic income provided by government would be a disincentive to work. What about that argument?
Well, I think, we've run a number of pilot projects in low income, medium income, and high income countries, and there's never been any strong indication that people reduce their work effort when they receive a basic income. And if you think about the Canada Child Benefit, there's not a lot of evidence that people are reducing the amount of work they do when they receive the Canada Child Benefit. In fact, many people use the money to pay for daycare.
And who would collect a basic income? At what age until what age?
We usually talk about it as an adult benefit. So many people talk about it filling in the gap for people between ages 18 and 64, so to speak. So it would be adult benefits similar to provincial income assistance. There's also the argument that many of these programs could be ultimately brought together into a more cohesive system. so that we'd in fact have a single system that applied to everybody.
Right. So what, have you given any thought to what's the right number for a basic income in this country? How many thousands of dollars?
You know, it's really hard to answer that question because that's ultimately a social or a political decision. The idea is that it should be sufficient to live with dignity. And so if we look at provincial income assistance, an unattached adult, a single adult in most provinces currently gets about $8,000 a year between the various programs that they're eligible for if they're dependent on provincial social assistance. Most people would argue that that's not really sufficient to live a dignified life. It's not sufficient. It's barely sufficient to keep body and soul together in most Canadian provinces. So I think we're looking at something slightly more than that. If you think about the very short run Ontario basic income pilot project, they were looking at an income for a single person of about $17,000, just under $17,000 a year.
All right, so that gets us into the conversation around sort of the costs of these kinds of things, and we'll talk about political will in a second as well. But the parliamentary budget officers pegged the cost of a national basic income at $44 billion a year. That's paying each low income. That would be paying about $9,500 a year. So that comes to the affordability question. How do we afford that? What's the economic argument in support of a basic income to suggest it's money well spent, that it's good value?
Okay. Of that $44 billion, you know, we're currently spending $20 billion a year between all of the provinces on the delivery of provincial income assistance. We currently are spending a lot of money on non-refundable tax credits and refundable tax credits. Many of those can be brought together to help finance a program. So it's not the massive financial hit that those numbers start to look like. In terms of the returns, I think we do have to think about a basic income from the perspective of a social return on investment. We did have a basic income experiment in Canada in the 1970s, a project called Mincome, which ran in the province of Manitoba. And one of the things we found was that if you offer people a basic income, hospitalization tends to fall, and tends to fall rather dramatically. In fact, it was about an 8.5% decline in hospitalization during that period. This is a country that's spending more than $60 billion a year on hospitals. And if you think of social programs in this country, most of them are addressing issues that are made much worse by poverty. So giving people money up front in order to help them live reasonable lives and provide reasonable lives for their kids, I think ultimately will pay off in terms of lower social costs attached to other kinds of social programs.
Okay, let's finish on this. Several of the parties in the election campaign are talking about basic incomes or are being open to the conversation around basic incomes. But as you say, we've had a number of pilot projects in this country before, and they all seem to come to an end because of cost or because of a lack of political will. But so why do you think we're in a different time now?
I think everybody's beginning to recognize the limitations of the programs we currently have. I think that there's an appetite for reform, not only of the social programs we have, but possibly for certain changes within the tax system. And I think that provides an opportunity to think about how we can integrate a basic income in terms of the way we deliver social programs in this country. There are challenges. I don't want to downplay it. There are many political and financial challenges associated with the delivery of a social program, but they're not, in essence, different from the kinds of challenges that were attached to the delivery of the Canada Child Benefit.
All right. Well, we'll see what kind of space the conversation around a basic income takes in the election campaign. Professor Evelyn Forget, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.